Hello and welcome everyone to Ananke's third edition of Women in Literature Festival. And I am absolutely thrilled to showcase this amazing session with Nilanjana Bhowmick and a little bit about Nilanjana. Nilanjana Bhowmick is the co-editor of the Gender and Development Journal. And I should stop there, Nilanjana.
I was.
Yes. And let's do something different. Let me give you the proverbial microphone and you introduce yourself. That would be wonderful.
Okay, so first of all, Sabin, thank you so much for having me here today. I have been so much looking forward to this, so honored to be here. And I am a journalist and writer based in New Delhi. I've been a journalist for close to 2 decades now. And my first nonfiction book, Lies Our Mothers Told Us, was published last year in India. It sort of critically examines the lives of women in our country, in a broader sense, the lives of women in patriarchal societies. So it kind of goes through the entire life cycle of women from when they're like really young and this feeling of being unwanted, and then they grow up, and the discrimination in the private spaces, in homes, unsafe streets. And I think like those are kind of really broader issues in most South Asian nations. So that's the book. It was received very well. Women have been reading it, to my great delight. And so I've been very happy with the kind of response it has got. So that's me in a nutshell.
That's you in an amazing nutshell. And the book that you've written, it's, first of all, it's so relevant and it resonates with, I don't think there's one person, one woman, girl, uh, who it wouldn't resonate with. So let's start with how it all began. How did when did it all begin? The story, the book, the idea.
So I have always loved working on social justice stories through the lens of gender. Because as one of my very favorite feminists, the late Kamla Bhasin ji said, that in every situation, among the most dispossessed, it's always the women who are the most dispossessed. Like whether it's poverty, whether it's any kind of discrimination, like on you know um minority communities, everywhere women suffer the most. And so I have always worked on these issues through a gender lens. And there were so many stories. I have been working for 22 years now, and there have been so many stories. And maybe maybe even half of them were published, because gender stories are very hard to publish. And I always now it's easier, but when I was at the peak of my journalism, you had to really convince editors, mostly male editors, that why this story matters, and why these stories don't need a peg, that gender equality is like something like climate change. Like in the beginning, you had to really explain to people why climate change matters. And today, everybody is talking about gender equality, women's unpaid caregiving, especially after COVID-19. But in those days, I was still working with these issues, but there were no takers. So I had all these stories, and I had, nowhere to publish them. That was one thing. And then I actually wrote an article for the Washington Post on the Women's March in the US. And there was a corresponding march that happened in India also. And I was just kind of just looking at that, like the women that these marches leave behind. And feminism has got such a bad name. Feminism, women, so many women, will, not want to call them feminists, because, then you are immediately, branded as some aggressive, angry, women. Um, I very, very, like, I have never come across, people who think of feminism, unless, they are obviously, like gender experts, or, I mean, scholars and all. Among the common people, the idea of a feminism is not that it's about equality, that, it is about rage, women's anger, or, women hating men. So I wrote a opinion piece for the Washington Post, about, like the women, our feminism movements have left behind, especially women from the middle classes, because I think, a lot of work happens on the grassroots, and good work is happening in the grassroots, but the middle classes are, kind of average, right? There is some sort of progressiveness, there is a veneer of progressiveness. Middle class people, would send their daughters to schools, but then again, they will also be told that your primary focus should be your family. Your work should never take precedence over your family. So I wrote that opinion piece, and then I got an interest from an US agent. She said that, there's a really good story here. Why don't you start writing? And then I was very, very like, I didn't want to write a book. Okay. I mean, like, I just didn't have the time. Like, I was a full-time journalist, I was the primary caregiver of my son at home. I just didn't have the time, to even consider writing a book. But she put that idea in my head, and I started looking through all the stories that I have not been able to tell as yet. And then I said, why not? I mean, let me, like, write a book. And that's how it all came about. Little pieces of, puzzles, all fit together. And it was a hard book to sell, because, um, it was it was the same thing, like when I was in, like, a journalist, it was a very hard sell, gender stories. And in publishing, at this point of time, it was a hard sell. But fortunately, I found a publisher, who felt, who understood the book. And she said that, we'll make this a big book, we'll cover, the entire sort of gamut of, a woman's existence. And I was very happy to do that. So, and now, I see that, so many, the book has sold so well that, I'm hoping that, like, this will make publishers think that, like, more books like this are actually needed, and that, like, more and more books on, various aspects of our lived experiences as women, not just feminism. Feminism is just one part of that whole puzzle, the whole puzzle of equality, as I call it. But it is also about women's lived experiences, because unless and until, I feel this strongly, like in our countries, unless and until you fix the home, you cannot fix, what is wrong with women in general. The double shift, of housework and, like, paid work, it's dangerous, it's killing, it's affecting, women's, mental health, their physical health. They have nobody to talk to, because, in India, in a country like India, I mean, housework is considered, see, all over the world, women do a majority of caregiving, right? Or household work. But, in a country like India, I think, globally, the rate is around 2.5 times more than women's unpaid caregiving. In India, it is 10 times more, because in India, and other countries, where, women are considered second class citizens, probably all across South Asia, unpaid caregiving, housework is a feminine job, right? It's not, the men don't do it. So I am hoping that, I'm hoping that, the book really gets, published in other, like South Asian countries. It reaches women in other countries, and that, like, it sparks, I wanted to spark a conversation. I wanted to spark a conversation about very taboo topics, like in my book, I talk about my father, I mean, who is a very loving father, he was very loving to us, when we were growing up. He gave us a lot of opportunities, but he was not, my mother, was a cop, she was a police officer, but he made her life very difficult. He was a very cruel husband, but he was a generally he was a nice man. And this is something I've noticed in South Asia, that very nice men, but the way they behave with their wives is so very cruel sometimes. So
Yeah.
which is why I like to say that, the middle classes, especially in South Asian nations, men, would say that, they want their daughters to fly, but they will keep their wives in cages.
Yeah, yeah, I absolutely agree with you. And this was a point that I wanted to discuss with you. I call it, I call it, and maybe others call it as well. There's this thing we talk about wokeness, and there's one thing that I say it, selective wokeness, you know, uh,
Absolutely.
uh, for like you're talking about your father, and I've seen it myself, firsthand as well, that uh, your father or your brother, they may be woke, but that's selective, because they'll be woke to an extent, uh, to some certain extent, where the power dynamics come in, or where patriarchal belief systems come in, which are deeply entrenched, uh, and gender stereotypes, that like you, and I'll quote you here. She wanted to make sure that she was seen not only as a professional woman earning a salary, but also a good homemaker. And that you're referring to your mom here. And that is not just, from my point of view, that's not just uh, the mom, the mother, who has that perspective, but it's an expectation of the family, regardless of how woke
Yeah.
or how educated they are. And this happens primarily in middle class and even upper class families as well. I don't think it trickles down to other classes, but mid class or upper middle class or upper classes. I think it happens there. The more woke you are, the more selective you are in your
See,
wokeness.
I feel that when you are going to the poorer sections of the society, women still face that same double shift,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
they have to go out to work because of purely economical reasons. So their husbands cannot really, they would love to, but they have to allow them to go out to work. With the upper classes also, sometimes money is not a problem, there are no economic reasons. So mostly, it's a very typical middle class phenomenon. And in say for example in South Asia, when we talk about the middle classes, we are talking about a mindset. We are not talking about like wealth as such, because a big trader is also middle class, and someone who might have just crossed the poverty threshold, they are also middle class. But I think middle class is a mindset. So, and that mindset sees women as more primarily housewives. So even in middle class families, where women are going out to work, they're getting educated, they're going out to work. But the point is that the moment the economic situation of the family changes, a lot of men would say that you leave your job and look after the household, look after the children. And a lot of women say that they are taking a break, because they feel that the husband is earning enough. And I think we just not we just women in our countries just don't understand that a job is not just about money, it is so much more. And I have seen this with women. who have left their jobs, to take care of the family, and suddenly, something has happened and they have gotten back to working, and then they say that we are never not working again. Because that the when you work, you are fully independent. It doesn't matter how much you are earning, but the fact that you are a person, apart from a mother, a daughter, sister, wife, unpaid caregiver, cook, cleaner, that you are somebody else. But I feel that given the patriarchal nature of our societies, it's hard for women to negotiate a good deal for themselves. So often I find, and this is I kind of feel that women do it all because they feel that it's a payout, that the freedom. I call them the frivolous freedoms, the frivolous freedoms of going out, wearing what you want, going out with your friends, having a job. We feel that we have been allowed this, so we must not cross the broader patriarchy, what you were also talking about. So basically, men are woke till they are not anymore. And especially, with men, I think, it is very important to see who they are at home. I mean, on social media, we can say we can be anyone we want to be. But that is why I keep saying that, that in our nations, Me Too, I keep saying this, that Me Too, comes in waves. Because, our real Me Too movement lies in women coming up and calling out their, fathers, husbands, and brothers. Because, the kind of oppression that women face inside their homes, we need to call that out first, and then only we will have that power. If we don't level the power at home, what hope is there to level the power like outside in the workspace? Because at the end of the day, it is these are the same men we are working with in the workplaces. They oppress their wives and other female relatives. So they obviously think that that's what women are for. So that same attitude is being carried to the public space as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Nilanjana, unfortunately, we're at the end of our session, and we need to pick this up from where we're, leaving this. But thank you so much. I'm so glad that we could make this happen.
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely. Yes. And
But
we will, we will
this is
do
not
this
the end.
again. But
Yeah.
I'm so glad that, we could, do this much
Kickstart the
also.
session.
Yes, absolutely. And this is a conversation, we need to keep on having this conversation. So, so thank you.
Thank you so much.